Well, I finally managed to get my hands on a bottle of Meghan's, as ever, rosé wine, and I'm going to try it for you now. Oh, it's sort of sweet at first, and then it leaves this sort of bitter, metallic aftertaste. It's a bit like Meghan herself, really.
Richard Eden drank Meghan's wine on camera and still thought we'd take him seriously. No, really. Let's talk about this level of desperation. He actually said it was sweet at first, then bitter and metallic, like Meghan herself. That's not a review. That's projection. That's years of unprocessed obsession, being spit into a wine glass with zero self-awareness. And let's talk about the bottle. It was already half empty before he pressed record. So you drank half the bottle, then turned to your camera to pretend it was disgusting. Make it make sense. If it was that bad, why didn't you stop at one sip? Why is it half gone, Richard? Were you rehearsing your slander while polishing off your second glass? What we witnessed wasn't wine tasting. It was a man so dependent on Meghan for relevance that he's now performing unpaid PR in the kitchen, trying to pass it off as critique. Richard, you spent years obsessing over her, writing the same bitter think pieces, recycling the same talking points. And now you're sipping her rosé, swearing you're above it, but still showing up every single time. And here's the real kicker. The New York Post, a publication that was never kind to Meghan, ran a blind taste test with actual sommeliers. No labels, no context, just the wine. And hers was picked best in the group. That's called taste. That's called objectivity. Two things you've never possessed. So let's be clear. Richard Eden didn't review the wine. He played to his audience. He drank half the bottle and hit record like he hadn't been gulping it in secret for the past hour. That's not critique. That's damage control for a man who realized he liked it too much and panicked. You claim she's unbearable, yet everything about you, your career, your relevance, your talking points, depends on her existence. You're not a journalist, Richard. You're a Meghan groupie in denial, a background character who keeps trying to force himself into the plot. And the performance? Girl, please. You were serving community theater understudy with a sinus infection. Flat, awkward, forced. It wasn't giving sophisticated. It wasn't giving witty. It was giving should have stayed off camera. That fake sneer, that dramatic pause. You're not a sommelier. You're not a critic. And sweetie, you're not an actor. Your taste level is non-existent. In wine, in delivery, in basic self-awareness. Every second of that video was crying for attention, dressed in a bad suit and worse lighting. That bottle wasn't half empty. It was a mirror. And what stared back wasn't Meghan. It was a bitter, irrelevant man in a clearance rack blazer, desperate for a headline, desperate for attention, and absolutely drowning in his own mediocrity. Swirl, sip, shrivel, disappear.
Richard Eden's recent wine-tasting spectacle perfectly encapsulates the hollow nature of manufactured outrage. He paraded a half-empty bottle of Meghan Markle's rosé on camera, pronouncing it undrinkable with all the gravitas of someone reading from a script written by his
Richard
own
Eden drank
bitterness.
Meghan's wine on camera.
This
and
wasn't
still thought
criticism.
we'd take him seriously.
This was
No,
performance
really.
art
Let's talk
for the
about this
perpetually
level of
offended.
desperation.
A
He
theatrical
actually said it
display
was sweet at
designed to
first,
generate
then bitter
clicks
and
from an
metallic,
audience
like
hungry
Meghan
for
herself.
celebrity
That's not a
takedowns,
review.
regardless
That's
of
projection.
authenticity.
That's years of unprocessed obsession.
What's particularly telling
being
is how his
spit into a
entire
wine
brand
glass
seems
with zero
surgically attached to
self-awareness.
Meghan's existence,
And let's talk about
without
the
her
bottle.
name
It
to
was already
invoke,
half
without
empty
her
before he
success
pressed
to
record.
diminish.
So you
Eden
drank
would simply
half the
vanish
bottle,
into
then
the
turned to
obscurity
your
he so
camera to
richly
pretend it was
deserved.
disgusting. Make it
The
make
evidence
sense.
practically
If it was
screams
that
itself.
bad,
A
why
man
didn't you
so
stop at
devoid
one
of
sip?
original
Why
thought
is it
that
half
he's
gone,
reduced to
Richard?
drinking
Were
half
you
a bottle of
rehearsing your
premium
slander
wine
polishing
while
off your
feigning
second
disgust
glass?
for
What
an
we
audience
witnessed
too
wasn't
distracted
wine
by their
tasting.
own
It was a man
grievances
so
to
dependent on
notice
Meghan for
the
relevance
contradiction?
that he's now performing unpaid
His shabby
PR
suit,
in the kitchen,
his
trying
transparent
to pass it off
desperation,
as critique.
his relentless
Richard, you spent
recycling
years
of tired
obsessing
talking
over her,
points.
writing the same
These
bitter
are the
think
hallmarks
pieces,
of someone
recycling
who
the
long
same
ago
talking
abandoned
points.
any
And now
pretense
you're
of
sipping her
credibility.
rosé, swearing you're above it, but
Eden
still
represents
showing
a particular
up
breed of
every
irrelevance,
single time.
not quite
And here's the
significant
real
enough
kicker.
to face
The
real
New York
consequences,
Post, a
yet
publication that
persistent
was
enough
never
to
kind
annoy
to
those
Meghan,
discerning
ran a
enough
blind
to
taste
recognize
test
him
with
for what
actual
he truly
sommeliers.
is.
No labels,
A parasite
no context,
masquerading
just
as a
the
critic.
wine. and
a
hers
fraud,
was picked best
trafficking
in the
in
group.
bitterness
That's called
because he
taste.
lacks the wit,
That's called
wealth,
objectivity.
or
Two things
integrity
you've
to
never
build
possessed.
anything
So
of
let's be
actual
clear.
substance.
Richard Eden
The
didn't review
fake
the wine.
review
He played
incident,
to his
Richard
audience.
Eden
He drank
half the bottle of
and
Meghan
hit
Markle's
record
rosé
like he
on
hadn't been
camera,
gulping it
then
in secret for the
pivoted to
past
claiming
hour.
the wine was
That's not
subpar.
critique.
A
That's
performance
damage
that
control
exposed
for a man
far
who
more
realized
about his
he
character
liked it too
than it
much
did
and panicked.
about the
You
product.
claim she's unbearable.
The
Yet
dishonesty
everything about
was
you,
almost
your
comical.
career, your
Here was a man
relevance, your
consuming the
talking points
contents
depends
with
on her
evident
existence.
satisfaction,
You're not a
only
journalist,
to flip
Richard.
the script
You're
once
a
the
Meghan
cameras
groupie in
rolled,
denial,
pretending
a background
he'd stumbled
character
upon
who
some
keeps trying to force
inferior
himself
vintage.
into the plot. And the
It wasn't
performance,
criticism.
girl, please.
It was
You were
theatre
serving
of the
community
lowest
theater
order.
understudy with a
Rather than
sinus
offering
infection.
any legitimate
Flat,
analysis
awkward,
or
forced.
tasting notes
It
that
wasn't
might
giving
suggest actual
sophisticated.
expertise,
It wasn't giving
he
witty.
simply
It was giving
demonstrated
should have stayed
what
off
happens
camera.
when
That
someone
fake
trades
sneer, that
integrity
dramatic
for the
pause,
possibility
you're not a
of a
sommelier.
viral moment.
You're not a critic. And sweetie,
The contradiction
you're
between
not an
his
actor.
actions and
Your
his
taste
words
level is
was impossible
non-existent.
to ignore.
In wine, in
You
delivery,
don't drain half a
in
bottle of
basic
something you
self-awareness.
genuinely believe
Every
tastes
second
bad.
of that video
And you
was
certainly don't
crying
do
for
it
attention,
while
dressed
maintaining
in a
a
bad
straight
suit
face.
and worse lighting.
What
That
emerged
bottle wasn't half
instead
empty.
was a
It was
masterclass in
mirror,
bad
and
faith,
what stared back
a
wasn't
calculated
Meghan.
move
It was a bitter,
designed to
irrelevant
capitalize
man in
on
a
existing
clearance-wrapped
negativity
blazer,
rather than
desperate for a
engage
headline,
in honest
desperate for
discourse.
attention. And
It was the
absolutely
kind of
drowning in
dishonest
his own
performance that
mediocrity.
revealed
Swirl,
not the flaws
sip,
in the rosé,
shrivel,
but the
disappear.
absence of principles in the reviewer himself. The hollow critic. How parasitic negativity replaces genuine achievement. The most damning aspect of this entire charade isn't the staged outrage or the transparent performance. It's the complete absence of anything substantive beneath the surface. Here stands someone whose entire identity has been constructed brick by brick from the rubble of another person's name. There are no original insights, no independent accomplishments, no body of work that exists separate from this obsessive fixation. Instead, what we witness is pure parasitism. A desperate attachment to relevance through negativity.
Prince Harry and
A
Meghan
feeding
Markle
mechanism
are
that only
Netflix
functions
producers
when
once
Meghan's
more.
name
Multiple
is
news
in the
outlets
mouth.
confirmed December 17th.
Without
the
her
Duke
to
and
drag
Duchess of
through the
Sussex
mud,
are set
there
to
is simply
produce
nothing.
The film adaptation
No
of the
platform,
2018
no credibility,
best-selling romance
no
novel,
reason
The Wedding
for
Date,
anyone
from
to pay
Netflix Through their
attention.
Archwell production company.
The integrity
The movie will
that
be
might
based
lend
on
weight
The Wedding Date,
to
the first
legitimate
book in a
criticism
series of
is
6
nowhere
books
to
by
be
Jasmine
found.
Guillory. The book
What
follows a
remains
woman who
is
agrees
only
to
the
go to a
hollow
wedding with a
echo
man she
of someone
meets while
speaking
stuck
with
in an
authority
elevator.
they
Girls
never
Trip writer
earned
Tracy
and never
Oliver
possessed.
is rumored to be adapting the
This
book for
isn't
film.
critique.
The news of Meghan and Harry's
This
latest
isn't
project
analysis.
comes after the two
This
announced that they
is
were
the behavior
continuing
of a
their working
parasite
relationship
masquerading
with Netflix,
as a
writing in a statement
commentator,
in August,
someone
in
so
part, "We're
devoid
proud
of
to extend our
independent success
partnership with Netflix
that they've
and
chosen
expand
to
our work
build
together
their
to
entire
include the As Ever
existence
brand.
in the
My
shadow
husband and I
of
feel
another
inspired
person's
by our partners
prominence,
who work
hoping
closely with
that
us and our
proximity to
Archwell
infamy
Productions
might
team
somehow
to
translate
create thoughtful
into
content
relevance.
across genres
And that is
resonate
perhaps
globally
the saddest
and
part of
celebrates
all.
our shared vision.
Not the lies,
In addition to
but
working
the
behind the
transparent
scenes,
hunger
Meghan will
beneath
reportedly
them.
play herself in the
Richard
upcoming Lily Collins and
Eden's
Brie Larson
Wine
movie Close Personal
Bottle.
Friends, releasing in
Charade,
2026.
a study in
This will mark the
transparent
first
deception.
time Meghan has been on
The
screen
evidence
in
of
more than
hypocrisy
8
couldn't be
years.
more glaring if it tried. Here's a man who clearly enjoyed the wine. Consumption doesn't lie, and neither does the rapidly depleting bottle sitting right there on camera for everyone to see. Yet the moment that recording light came on, suddenly he's singing a different tune, calling it subpar, dismissing it with all the performative disdain he could muster. The real tell? Ask yourself this. Would someone who genuinely disliked a product go back for more? If his financial situation permitted, he'd be purchasing this wine again without hesitation, because his actions betrayed what his mouth refused to admit. What we're witnessing here isn't criticism or honest commentary. It's the contradiction between private satisfaction and public performance, between what his lips touched and what his lips claimed. The bottle tells one story, his words tell another, and when those two narratives clash so violently, you're left with only one conclusion. The man on camera wasn't being authentic, he was being tactical, crafting a narrative designed to fit whatever agenda keeps him relevant in circles that thrive on manufactured outrage rather than genuine assessment. Richard Eden's questionable financial status, the cheap suit hanging off his frame, tells you everything you need to know about his financial reality. This isn't someone who's built an empire or accumulated wealth through any legitimate means. This is someone scraping by, making do with whatever discount rack could offer him. You can see it in every thread, every poorly fitted seam, a walking advertisement for someone operating on a shoestring budget. And if his wardrobe wasn't telling enough, consider his wine habits. He's the type accustomed to purchasing wine by the glass at happy hour, not the kind of person who casually opens bottles at home or attends tastings with any sort of discerning palate. He loved that rosé bottle because it represented something he couldn't normally afford: quality, sophistication, legitimacy. The fact that he'd buy more if he could actually afford it becomes painfully obvious when you look at the totality of his circumstances. Limited personal resources have clearly shaped not just his choices, but his entire approach to life, which might explain why he resorts to dragging others down rather than building anything of substance himself. Richard Eden's hollow crusade against Meghan Markle. The real tragedy here is that Eden's entire operation is engineered specifically for a particular audience, those whose intellectual capacity matches his own. He peddles fabrications to undiscerning followers who lap up every dishonest frame and recycled talking point without a shred of critical thought. These are the people who don't require substance, who mistake volume for validity and repetition for truth. Eden knows exactly who he's performing for: the low IQ Meghan haters who ask no questions, demand no evidence, and celebrate any narrative that aligns with their predetermined hatred. But here's the problem: that's a ceiling, not a foundation. Without actual material of consequence, without a single genuine insight or independently earned credential to his name, he can never break through to any credible audience. He's trapped in an echo chamber of his own making, preaching only to the converted, never ascending beyond the shallow end of the discourse pool. Real influence requires substance. All Eden has is spite masquerading as analysis. Richard Eden, a wannabe in a sea of serious detractors. Richard Eden fancies himself a heavyweight in the hater arena, but the reality is far less impressive. While the truly consequential critics have earned their notoriety through relentless campaigns and actual impact, Eden remains stuck in the minor leagues. A wannabe operating without the ammunition or reach to make any real dent in the discourse. His stunts, like the rosé bottle charade, are the desperate flailings of someone trying to punch above his weight class but consistently missing. The bigger haters in this space have faced their reckoning. They've made enough waves to draw attention, for better or worse. Eden, by contrast, is a Temu knockoff in a designer's game, failing to generate the kind of splash that would even register on anyone's radar. He's got the bitterness, sure, but none of the substance, just a wannabe masquerading as a serious player while the actual heavyweights do their damage. In a crowded ocean of outrage, Richard Eden is barely a ripple. Richard Eden's fraudulent wine review exposed. Richard Eden's carefully orchestrated wine review crumbled the moment Notorious JTB called out the obvious fabrication. A half-empty bottle presented as a legitimate critique, complete with performative disgust and manufactured outrage, designed to deceive his audience. The on-camera tactics were laughably transparent. Grip the bottle, grimace for the camera, and regurgitate the same tired talking points about Meghan that his low-information followers eat up without question. What deserves recognition here is the audacity of his dishonesty. The shamelessness with which he peddles lies to an audience hungry for any ammunition against his target. He didn't taste that wine with any genuine palate. He drank it, enjoyed it, and then lied about it on camera for engagement and relevance, a move that should be called out precisely for what it is: fraudulent behaviour masquerading as credible commentary. The hollowness of manufactured outrage. At its core, this entire spectacle brings nothing of value to legitimate discussion. It's merely low-effort hate content dressed up as criticism, a transparent attempt to generate engagement through vitriol rather than substance. The performance of credibility, whether it's the stage tasting or the performative indignation, represents nothing more than fan behaviour cloaked in bitterness, a parasitic attachment to relevance that collapses under the slightest scrutiny. What becomes evident through this pattern is the demonstrable need for critical evaluation of sources, for readers and viewers to ask themselves whether they're consuming genuine analysis or simply consuming recycled grievance. When someone's entire output hinges on tearing down another person's name rather than building something of their own merit, when integrity takes a back seat to optics, and when the work itself lacks original insight or independent credibility, we're witnessing not criticism, but a hollow echo chamber designed for those already primed to listen. The real tragedy isn't the wine or the suit or the half-empty bottle. It's that audiences continue to grant platforms to voices that offer nothing but borrowed outrage, no original perspective, and no value beyond serving as a mirror for existing resentment. In an age of infinite content, this is perhaps the most damning indictment. Not that he exists, but that some still choose to listen.